All right. Yeah, we are down to our last sub-session before you head back through to the main stage for the rest of the conference. But yeah, I would just like to give a brief introduction. Next up, we have Bert from IFS Ultimo, who will be covering the topic of product special application management. I don't want to take too much of your time, so I'll just hand over the controls for you and you can take it away.
Yes, thank you very much. Welcome everyone to this product special on application management. So my name is Bert Elbertsen. I'm a product owner at IFS Ultimo. And what we are going to talk about in this session is how you can use today's configuration options to leverage Ultimo's flexibility, but at the same time also keep this maintainable application, so to minimize administration and therefore also maximize benefits from new features. Now, if you think about Ultimo, then Ultimo is all about maintaining assets in your organization. And during the roadmap session, we've heard Chris and Harmjan already talk about these different maintenance strategies you can apply on them. But if you look at your job as an application manager, then actually Ultimo is one of your assets. And do you also have a maintenance strategy for the Ultimo application? Now, why do we think that is important? Well, first of all, in your job, a better maintainable application is always something to strive for. And if you just Google on the word maintainability, you will pretty soon reach the Wikipedia page giving you all these advantages of what a maintainable application brings you. And more specifically for Ultimo, it also means that you can more easily benefit from new features and standard optimizations we bring to the software. And if you are already part of the Azure cloud, you've migrated to the Azure cloud, then you will know that we bring these features pretty regularly, and having a maintainable application means that it is more easy to benefit from it. Of course, a lot of this, having a maintainable application, has to do with the way that you configure Ultimo. And if you look at some of the trends, so for example, looking from the past up till now, you can see that the way that we configure Ultimo already has changed quite a lot. So we went from changing every bit of the application, so reconfiguring the entire screen, to sticking more close to the standard configuration. I think it was even mentioned during the Ravago presentation that they also decided to stick to the standard configuration because it has all these benefits on future maintenance. What we've also seen is that we've come from decentralized configuration, and that means that you are configuring on group and user level, for example, to more centralized configuration, so configuring on application level. Now, what we've done, I think it was about 2 years ago when we decided to go to the Azure cloud, we introduced configuration points. And I already heard some feedback once in a while that some of you see configuration points as a way to bully you in your configuration, or maybe that we create some new kind of cash cow out of it, but that was really not the intention of the configuration points. I believe that configuration points provide you insight into the maintenance state of the application. And that's what I'm trying to show you in the upcoming presentation. Now, of course, the way you can configure Ultimo also has changed over the years. If you look at what we've done the past few years, we've of course delivered some new configuration tools to you as well. We've introduced authorization groups. We've made it possible to enable or disable functionalities in application elementary. And we've also added some new tools for your users to create their own reports with the personal reporting tool, for example. And they have the ability to do some Excel exports in the selection list. If you look at what we've done more recently, is that we've been working on new insights. Insight into the usage of your configured reports, or insight into how much of the standard configuration is removed in your own configuration. So let's go over these tools a bit and see how they can help you in reducing the administration of your Ultimo application. Starting with authorization groups. So you may be used to always create a new configuration group for each role in your organization. And we've seen it in the past as well. So we have a group for role A, a group for role B, but what about the users that have multiple roles in your organization? we've seen combination groups, group A plus B, group A plus B plus C, etc. But it also means you have to maintain all these groups. Authorization groups, however, are much more flexible, and that is because they have no impact on the configuration points. And well, the reason for that is quite simple. You cannot configure anything in these groups. It's just all about authorization. But they can be very useful for organizations where people have a lot of multiple roles, or for organizations that have to deal with all these changing authorizations all the time, or the company's growing a lot. And what about temporary authorization? Think about the summer break, for example, and other people need to take over jobs from each other. Authorization groups are very flexible, meaning that they can be assigned or unassigned to anyone at any time. And they can also be stacked, so a user can be part of multiple authorization groups, making sure that you are granted additional access all the time. So definitely something to consider if you are struggling with a complex authorization structure. Next up, we've got the enabling and disabling functionality. If you ask me, this is one of the most powerful tools we've released in the past few years to prevent configuration in your environment. So let's just say, if you look at the standard screens of Ultimo, out of the box, they contain all these functionalities. And in your organization, you may not want to use them all. So what you may have done in the past is that you would get rid of all these functionalities by configuring screens, configuring selection lists, configuring the mobile application, and getting rid of all these dependencies that are related to these functionalities. A new feature is to simply disable them in the application element tree, resulting in no configuration at all. And all these items I've just mentioned, screens, mobile, etc., it's all gone there. So it's a very powerful tool to clear some of the functionalities you do not use without having additional configuration. If you're looking at reporting, then, well, for many years, I think that Crystal Reports, our reporting tool, has been the only tool to create reports. And therefore, you may have created a lot of them as well. Maybe a lot of list reports also. But if you look at what we offer the users nowadays, then they can create their own list reports. And these reports will never conflict with our standard configuration because they are personal. We don't deliver standard personal reports. We only deliver standard reports made with Crystal. So if you get a request from a user, I need an additional list, why not first see if the user can get the data out of Ultimo themselves by either creating a personal report or by using the Excel export functionality. So this is what you can do, but what does it mean in terms of configuration points? So let's look at some of the examples we've just heard and compare the traditional way of configuring with, well, perhaps the recommended way of doing things. So if you're looking at configuration group versus authorization group, the number of groups you have doesn't really matter. It's about the configuration you have in these groups. And we believe that if you use authorization groups more often, you can limit the amount of configuration needed in all these other groups. Of course, as we've learned in the beginning, configuring on group level is also not a great idea. And you can see that here in the comparison, it will immediately cost you quite some configuration points, while configuring screens on application level is not that expensive. Now, the additional benefit of authorization groups is, of course, that you never have to configure anything. So you may need to do something with authorization, but it will never cost you any configuration points. If you look at unused functionalities and getting rid of that, then yeah, I think we all know that getting rid of these unused items in all these parts of Ultimo will give you a lot of configured files and thereby also configuration points, while just doing it with the application element tree will not result in any, so no points there. And of course, the same goes a bit for reports. If you let the user create their own reports and also manage them, well, it will not cost you any configured files. It will not cost you any effort to maintain them. Whilst doing it with the Crystal tool actually costs you double the amount of points, because you do not only need a workflow, a report in Crystal, but you also need a workflow to start them. So for 5 simple list reports, you already need 10 configuration points in Ultimo. Now, still here thinking, okay, you're showing me this comparison of configuration points, but why should I care? What is the actual benefit? does it matter if I have 30 configuration points, 70 or 200? What is the point? And let's look at it at a different way. So keep this in mind. So we've got these configuration groups, and we've configured Ultimo a lot, and we've created all these crystal reports, compared to the other way of not doing that, and see what it does in terms of maintainability. Now, in one of the first slides, I've showed you the Wikipedia picture, mentioning that a maintainable product says something about the ease of which future maintenance can be done, or you can cope with future changes. And let's have a look at some of these changes and see what the amount of manual actions does on that. So before we go to that, this was the total amount of configuration points spent. So in the traditional way, it was 30, and the recommended way, only 1. Let's skip that and move on to the manual actions. Now, if you're going to create some groups, of course, that will cost you some time. It doesn't matter whether it is configuration groups or authorization groups, you have to set them up. You have to do something with the authorization. The only difference is that for authorization groups, you do not have to configure any screens, for example. And the actual benefit is in the temporary role assignments. For example, during absence or during the summer break we've just mentioned, you can assign or unassign these authorization groups at any time. It will not cost you anything. While if there are new roles introduced, well, you have to create these new groups again and think about the entire configuration in that group. Of course, I think you all know that configuring each part of Ultimo requires quite some actions versus one single click in the application element tree requires pretty much none. But what we did not answer yet is the what if question. What if you want to make use of that functionality later on? In the old situation, you would have to reconfigure everything back again, while doing it the recommended way in the application element tree. It's actually just one click and everything is back again. So that really saves you a lot of time. Finally, of course, the reports. You can let the users manage their own reports, which will save you all the time because they can do it themselves. And if you just have to add a single additional column to a report, you have to configure all the reports for them. So that was the comparison with the manual actions, and also what I wanted to tell you about configuring Ultimo. But what if you've been a customer for all these years and you've got this pile of configuration and you don't know where to start to get rid of it? So I've been telling you that we've been working on these insights. And one of the first steps we took is that we've made a new tool available to see how many of your configured reports are still being used. So if you look at this overview in a few months, you can probably see which configured reports are not used at all. And maybe that's a starting point of getting rid of some of them, so you no longer have to maintain them. If some of them are barely used and they are list reports, maybe you can check with the user if you cannot convert them to a personal report. So this overview will give you a first insight into perhaps getting rid of some of your configuration. Of course, you need to wait for a few months because the calculation will start once the tool is available in your environment. And as a sneak preview, it's kind of a teaser actually, because we're still working on this. We are now also working on insights in your configured screens. And that means that we will add a new feature to the screen designer where you can actually see what you are missing out on of the standard configuration. So all the items that have been deleted in your configuration will be visible in the screen designer. And the best thing about it is that if you do want to make use of them, there will also be a feature to retrieve them into your configuration. So we've been sending these newsletters, these announcements about and everything you can configure in Ultimo, or all the new features we've configured in Ultimo. And if you think, hey, I'm not seeing that on my configuration, it's probably because it is conflicting with your own configuration, and this tool might give you the insights into that. So as some key takeaways to summarize this presentation, are you aware of the maintenance state of your own Ultimo application? Perhaps configuration points will tell you something about it. And otherwise, this may be a starting point to have a look at it. Of course, you always need to configure something in Ultimo, but if you do, at least consider the options you have and think about what is best in terms of a maintainable application. And of course, try to use these new insights to perhaps improve the maintenance state of the application and therefore also benefit from the new features we bring to you. And that is it. So thank you for your time. I don't know if we have still time for some questions or that we ran out of time.
Yeah, just in time. It's 4 o'clock right now, but yeah, we've been struggling to get through to the questions because the presentations have been quite short. But yeah, thanks a lot, Bert, and we can maybe try squeeze in a quick question. Perhaps you can give a shorter answer now, and at a later stage we can definitely perhaps provide them with a longer, more insightful answer. The first question is, what is, in your opinion, the hardest to create teamwork? And what is your experience with the ISM model?
I'm not sure how that relates to my presentation, actually, but...
Yeah, I mean, perhaps maybe then this came through a little bit later. Okay, we can move on to that. I think maybe that was for Vincent's presentation.
I think it was for someone else, indeed. Yeah.
Yeah. Then, okay, how about this one then? This one seems related to you. Where can I find the number of configuration points that I've used in Ultimo?
Yeah, we've made that visible in the Ultimo configuration tool, but you can only see that if you are already on our Azure platform. So you just log on into the configuration tool, go to the login, and then we have this configuration log, and there you can see it.
Okay, great. And perhaps one more question. Is it possible to use Excel as an output for personal reports?
Yeah, I think it was actually mentioned during the roadmap presentation that indeed next year we will be bringing that feature to the personal reports to have Excel as an output. Yeah.
All right, great. Well, that's it for now. Okay, maybe one more quick one. Does the configuration report usage monitoring only become available in the cloud, or is it also on-premise?
It is also released on premises, but only in the latest LTS version, so the 2022 version we have. So you can only use it if you're on that version.
All right, great. Well, I think, yeah, that sums it up for now. Thanks a lot for the presentation, Bert. Much appreciated. And I think, yeah, now everyone's going to move back to the main stage to continue with the conference.
Yes.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.